Hey you guys, what's up? It's 54 here, and welcome to the fourth episode of Criterion Roulette. Now, if you guys don't know what this series is, it is a series where I buy three Criterion films, one that I've chosen for myself, one that a friend chooses for me, and then one where I just like put all the Criterion spine numbers in a random number generator, and I pick one, and then I take it from there. So yeah, there's three films in this episode, and the first one I'm going to be starting with, which is the one I chose for myself, is Mulholland Drive, released in 2001, directed by David Lynch. Um, I've seen two David Lynch feature films before. I saw Eraserhead and Blue Velvet, and I liked both of them. I especially liked Blue Velvet a lot. I've heard from many, many people over the years that this is truly one of the weirdest movies of all time, and that it's impossible for you to understand it. So I really want to know why people are saying that. And also, when I joined Letterboxd, I added, I think, about maybe 10 or 12 movies to my watch list, like right away, that I wanted to watch. This was one of the first ones I added, and I joined Letterboxd like almost 5 years ago, November 2016. And this was one of the first films I added, and out of the first that I added right when I joined, this is the only one I have not seen yet, so I will finally be crossing that off my list. But yeah, so we're going to take a look at what's inside here now. All right, so here is the front cover. I really like the way it looks. And then there's the back, and the case inside actually looks kind of nice. It's like a image of a key. Obviously, I'll know the significance of that once I watch the film. And then here is the booklet it comes with. And then this thing folds out, actually, which looks pretty cool. So it folds out into that, and then there's the disc. But yeah, I'm definitely excited to finally check this out. As I said, I'm very intrigued to find out how this film turns out and why everybody says it's so weird. So let's pop this one in. Alright, guys, so I just finished watching Mulholland Drive, and I liked this movie. It's. I don't understand it at all. I really do not. But I liked watching every minute of it. Naomi Watts and Laura Elena Herring, they were both really, really good. Um, the weirdness of it all was incredibly captivating. That's one thing David Lynch does really well. His films are always really, really weird, and he like draws you into it, and like really like it just really like a good way to put it is the episode of Family Guy where they're like, we now return to how David Lynch stole Christmas, and he like comes down the chimney and he's like, hey, I have a present for you, it's a thumb. Don't be scared, let the fear wash over you. That's a good way to put it. Like, really just like let what he's putting out wash over you. Like, just accept what's happening, and you'll have a hell of a better time than you normally would. Um, yeah, as I said, this is a weird ass film. It opens not the way I expected it to open at all. It gets incredibly confusing in the last half hour, just to warn you. Because like everything else before it is stuff that's like, it's still a little bit confusing, but it just seems like, it's like different stories. But then in the last half hour, like there's a bunch of stuff thrown at you, and it's really hard to keep up. I am interested in like looking up more about this movie, because this is, as I said, this is a crazy movie. Like there's a lot of like things in here. As I said, last half hour gets really confusing, where there's a lot of stuff thrown at you. And that's the thing. David Lynch, what I love about him is he can make something so confusing and so weird, but you're always interested in what's happening. Like, it's so rare to see a filmmaker do what he does, because he has a level of weirdness that cannot be paralleled by anybody. Like, literally no one. And he's one of the few directors who does that and gets mad respect for it. Like, you don't see kinds of filmmakers doing the things that he does and them getting the same amount of respect, or even a lot of respect at all, really. which is kind of sad because I like weird stuff if it's done well, and David Lynch can really pull you in. Yeah, I definitely like this film. I would definitely recommend it, but just know you're in for quite a doozy. I would give this a 3.5 out of 5. I liked it quite a bit. Yeah, I think that's all I gotta say about this one. I would definitely recommend this. I wouldn't recommend this if this is your first David Lynch film, because what I would recommend you do is watch Blue Velvet, because I think that is like easily as mainstream as he's gotten thus far. Because like Blue Velvet's like relatively easy to follow. And I would watch some of his short films because his short films will show like the weirder side of him. But as I said, if this is your first David Lynch film, I wouldn't recommend starting with this. As I said, start with Blue Velvet, then watch a few short films, and then definitely get into this. Or watch Eraserhead, because Eraserhead's also really weird too. But yeah, I like this film quite a bit, and I definitely can't wait to look up more stuff about it so I can maybe understand it better. And I definitely can't wait to watch more David Lynch stuff. I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, I will see you guys hopefully tomorrow when I watch the second film for this episode. Alright, guys, so it is now 2 days after I finished watching Mulholland Drive, and I'm going to be watching the next film in this episode. I actually didn't finish watching all the special features on the Mulholland Drive Criterion, but the ones I did watch were really, really interesting. Like, there's a really interesting interview with Naomi Watts and David Lynch that's on there, and then there's also one with Naomi Watts, Justin Theroux, Joanna Ray, and Laura Herring. That was really, really interesting because there was like a lot of cool facts about it. Like I didn't even know that apparently Mulholland Drive was originally intended to be a pilot for a TV show for ABC, and then David Lynch decided to make it into a feature film after ABC didn't really want it. There's like a really like there's like a way bigger story than what I'm giving you, but very interesting interviews from what I've seen so far on there. But moving on to the second film of this episode of Criterion Roulette. This is one that my friend Chris recommended to me, so thank you very much, Chris. And that film is A Face in the Crowd, released in 1957, directed by Elia Kazan. I got the name right. Um, I gotta say, I did not expect Chris to pick this out of everything because um, my friend Chris is a huge horror fanatic. Like literally anything horror he absolutely loves, and this isn't a horror movie. So I totally expected him to pick something that was horror related. But he chose this one, and yeah, no, I haven't seen too many 50s movies. I can't really recall one that I have seen, but I'm definitely excited to check this out. Chris said that it was like very he said it felt like very timeless, like in the sense that he felt a lot of the stuff that happened in this movie was kind of like what happened when Trump was in office. Um, so I'm looking forward to checking this one out. I am now going to throw you over to Chris, who gave me a brief clip explaining why he chose this one for the episode.
So I chose A Face in the Crowd just because it's like the first script I ever read, and it was just really influential, I guess, just because, I'd never read a script before, like all the way through. So that was dope. And honestly, like it's just such a solid film. And Andy Griffith, oh my God, like yes, please. Overall, yeah, just like especially with everything that went on with Trump, it was, very similar. So I think it's very culturally relevant as well. So just very timeless film. It's just good. It's just a good movie to watch. It's yeah, just crazy influential, I guess, is my main reason. Yeah, and Andy Griffith.
All right, Chris, thank you very much for that little explanation. And here's the front of the case and the back. And then on the inside, there's the disc artwork. It's like a nice light blue with almost like a beige for the title, which looks really nice. And then the booklet that's in here, if I can get it out. There we go. Has a nice piece of artwork on there that looks really cool, and then there's a quote on the back. But yeah, so this is definitely a different kind of film, unlike anything else I've seen on Criterion Roulette so far, at least that's what I think it's going to be like. Um, Yeah, so I'm definitely excited to check this one out. As I said, I have not seen too many 50s movies. I'm actually not even quite sure if I've seen any 50s movies, but yeah, let's pop this in. Let's hope it's good. All right, you guys, so I just finished watching A Face in the Crowd, and I liked it. It was entertaining all throughout. I was always wanting to see what would happen next. Andy Griffith is absolutely terrific in this movie. His performance is so great. Um, this movie was definitely ahead of its time too. Like the story is something that still happens today. Like I can't exactly say for sure, but I feel like because this was made in 1957, I feel like there probably wouldn't have been films that would have tackled this story before, or at least not that many of them, because it's almost like watching this almost had me feeling the same way I did after watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where you know how it's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's like a very classic slasher film, and it's like it set the blueprint for like all future slasher movies. Because if you watch the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre and you've seen tons and tons of other slasher movies, you really see how all those modern slashers literally took after Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I feel like a lot of films, say Bamboozled is a good example. Um, and Bamboozled is another one that's about show business, that's about TV and the rise and fall, of a TV executive. And it's like I feel like films like this kind of set a blueprint for stories like that a lot of future films like I don't want to say borrowed heavily from, because I mean, that's not that doesn't sound like a good thing. But I mean, it's like they were inspired by this, and they, as I said, it really like set the blueprint for the future films like this, which is always really interesting to see, especially when it's something as old as this, or in Texas Chainsaw Massacre's case, in the 70s. It's so cool seeing something that is so common nowadays, and you think, oh, it might have been like, a couple decades ago, when you realize it was a lot longer ago than that. So it's always really, really cool, I think, to see things like that. As I said, I like this one quite a bit. I would definitely recommend it. I would give this a 3.5 out of 5. Could inch closer to a 4, but the main issue I had with this was I thought it was too long. It's 2 hours and 6 minutes, which I don't think it needed to be that long. I think you could have cut like an easy 20 minutes off this and it would have been a lot better. But as I said, I liked this. Definitely ahead of its time. A story that is definitely worth watching. And Andy Griffith is absolutely excellent in this movie. Like, definitely check this out. If you guys haven't seen it, if you haven't seen a lot of older, like really old films, I would definitely give this one a shot. But yeah, so that is the second film that I watched for this episode, and I will see you guys maybe tomorrow or the next day when I watch the third and final film for this episode. Alright, you guys, so it is now the day after, and I'm going to be watching the third and final film for this episode of Criterion Roulette. This is the random spine number one. And the film that I drew for this one is Stranger Than Paradise, released in 1984, directed by Jim Jarmusch. I have seen two Jim Jarmusch films before this. I've seen Down by Law and The Dead Don't Die. Pretty sure, yeah, Down by Law was the first one I saw, and I really, really like that a lot. Like, the thing I love about the two Jim Jarmusch films I've seen is that he seems to have a way of having really, really subtle comedy, but it like really sneaks up on you and you just find yourself really, really laughing hard, but he doesn't just hit you over the head with it. It's very, very just subtle, and you somehow just find yourself laughing really, really hard. And like with Down by Law, it had that, but another thing I really loved about that was like how the characters were like, you just loved watching the characters because they were so rich and full of life, and he really like spent time with them. and like you really really loved them. Like Roberto Benigni, I think was his name. He was the one who played the tourist. He was great. Like he was so funny because like he just kept on pissing off the other two guys. Like they did not like him. They seemed to like find him annoying, but like he just kept on like saying so many funny things. Like I loved that, and it had a really really nice ending too that I really liked. And then The Dead Don't Die, which was his most recent film, I really liked that one too. I thought it was definitely very, very funny. I like zombie movies, especially like zombie comedies. And one of the things, like as I said, his humor is very, very subtle. You may not catch everything, but the thing in The Dead Don't Die that has me laugh every single time is the part where Adam Driver rolls up to the crime scene and he's in like that tiny red smart car. Just the image of him in that tiny, tiny car just sends me into such laughter every single time I see it because it's just such a funny image. But as I said, like, he doesn't hit you over the head with it because, movies like Monty Python and Doctor Strangelove, I don't really like those. And not because they're badly made movies, but just because the style of comedy is just not what I find funny. And like, that's the thing. The style of humor, I think, in Doctor Strangelove and Monty Python, it's only funny to a specific type of person. Like, you will find it very, very funny, or it won't be your thing. And that's the thing. With me, it's not my thing. But Jim Jarmusch does that almost kind of a similar idea, but it's like it's subtle, but it is funny. Like as there's sometimes like I'll be watching like Monty Python. I remember in eighth grade once, actually, my teacher was showing us a clip from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It was I won't use this as an example. Just use my iPad. But it was the part in where they're like all in like these hoods or whatever, and they're making like a weird chant. They're like Mabo Badi, Mabo Badi, or something like that. And they just kept like hitting themselves in the face with like these books they had in their hands. And I just remember this one girl who was like the most basic hot girl that was in that. There's always one in every school. She laughed so hard every single time that happened, and I thought, huh, wouldn't have expected her to find this the most funny out of everyone else, but you get what I'm saying. Like, there's subtle humor where it doesn't like, really click, and then there's other times where it can. And with Jim Jarmusch's films that I've seen so far, it's done that. So yeah, definitely excited to check this out. I definitely want to see even more of Jim Jarmusch's films. So yeah, let's take a look inside this and let's pop it in. All right, so here's the front of the case, and then there's the back. One of the things that's really nice about this Criterion is that in the special features, it has Jim Jarmusch's first ever film in here, Permanent Vacation. I love when Criterion does that, where they take like films from directors that aren't as accessible and they put them in here. I really love that because like this one has Jim Jarmusch's first. The Blowout Criterion had, I believe, Brian De Palma's first film. It was called Murder a la Mode. The Slacker Criterion had It's Impossible to Learn to Plow by Reading Books, and the Criterion of Scanners has an early David Cronenberg film in there too. So that's pretty good. And then open this up, and there is the disc, and there's the book. It's a very thick book. And this one, it's almost making me think that this one's like thicker than the one for Mulholland Drive because it's very, very thick, especially for one that's just in like a regular Criterion case. Because like with like the ones for like Mulholland Drive, like see, this is in like a whole like slip case here. Usually the books are really thick. I think the thickest one that at least that I've seen was for the Do the Right Thing Criterion. That one's huge. But yeah, this is definitely a thick book. But the thing is, when I took a look at the inside of it, it doesn't just have stuff for Stranger Than Paradise. It has stuff for Permanent Vacation as well, which Permanent Vacation is Jim Jarmusch's debut film that is in the special features on here. So this seems like it's going to be a really great package. I really can't wait to check out the one of the special features. But yeah, let's pop this in and hopefully it's good. Alright, guys, so I just finished watching Stranger Than Paradise, and I thought it was okay. Sadly, there wasn't nearly as much comedy present in this that I would have wanted, because, as I said, Jim Jarmusch has a very unique style of comedy that really works well, and there wasn't a whole lot of that in there, which was a shame. However, this was one of his very early films. I think this was only his second, because Permanent Vacation is his debut, and that was made in 1980, and this one was made in 1984. And Down by Law, which at the moment is my favorite of his, that was made in 86. So, maybe I guess just his like later films, he found a bit more of a rhythm, or maybe made the comedy a lot more consistent. But yeah, maybe that's the case. As I said, this was only his second film, so who knows? But the things I liked about it though, the characters were all very interesting and likable. They do kind of remind me a bit of the characters in Down by Law, because there's like one guy who just kind of seems like he's angry all the time, that being John Lurie's character in this movie, and I'm pretty sure the pimp from Down by Law, the one who was the pimp. And then there's there's one guy who just kind of seems to like go with the flow, and then there's a foreigner, because what's her name? Esther Balint plays John Lurie's cousin in this movie, and she's not exactly a foreigner, but she's from Hungary. She has a Hungarian accent. And she's this the one foreign person who seems to kind of annoy everybody. That would be Esther Balint in this movie, and then Roberto Benigni in Down by Law. They kind of reminded me of that, but the characters in this were all very likable and entertaining. Well, I mean, John Lurie was kind of a dick, but they were all very entertaining to watch. There was some good moments of comedy in here. As I said, there wasn't like a whole lot of comedy, but um, the moments of comedy that were in here were quite good. And one thing I gotta say, the ending is kind of nuts. Like in a good way, because like I will say one thing, I won't spoil anything. The ending to this movie is so random and just comes at you out of nowhere. Oh man, like I definitely, if you guys have seen this movie, let me know in the comments what you yourself thought of the ending. I think it's just absolutely insane. Like, I did not expect it to happen. I mean, part of it, kind of, but then like the other part, I'm just like, what the hell? There was no reason for that to happen, which I just thought was so funny. Another thing I liked about it was it had a very pleasing and calming like aesthetic and like direction style, because that is what Jim Jarmusch does pretty well in the other films I've seen from him. As I said, they're very very light. They don't yell at you in your face. They're very very easy watches, and very light. They just kind of go with the flow, and they're just they're very easy to watch. Um, Overall, I did like Stranger Than Paradise. At the moment, it's my least favorite of Jim Jarmusch's. Um, as I said, I wish the comedy was way more consistent, but overall, I did think it was a good movie. He definitely saves us from being bad with some really good direction and likable characters. And as I said, that ending is pretty nuts. Overall, I would give Stranger Than Paradise a 3 out of 5. I am definitely looking forward to checking out Permanent Vacation. Because of how unique Jim Jarmusch is, I definitely want to see the rest of his movies. It's not often when you see something, because I feel like normally Jim Jarmusch's intentions I wouldn't like. It wouldn't be my thing, but he does it in a way that is very, that actually makes it work. I've said that like so many damn times in this video, but yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it normally I think wouldn't be my thing, but he finds a way to make it good and make it interesting. But yeah, so that is the end of this episode of Criterion Roulette. I hope you guys enjoyed. I don't know when I'll be making the next one, maybe towards the middle of July. I mean, thing is, I wasn't even planning on having this episode come out until like, or even start making, like, watching the films until like June 15th, because Amazon Prime has been they've been kind of going back and forth on their whole 2-day shipping promise, and recently it had been taking like a week for things to get to me. So that's why I ordered this round early. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I can order them at the beginning of the month and then they'll be here by the middle of the month, so it'll be right around when I would have wanted to do it anyway. But yeah, no, they seem to have sorted their stuff out now, and they were here in 4 days. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it for this episode. Subscribe for more content. Please leave a like in the video if you enjoyed, and remember, you guys, whenever traveling to Florida on a whim, say no to drugs.